It is a milestone episode 20 of the Belleville Sens podcast. David Foote and Joel Vanderlaan back again with you for another episode on the Belleville Sens Entertainment Network, and glad to have you with us. A lot to discuss this week. The AHL schedule came out this afternoon. We're going to break that down, what it looks like for the Belleville Senators. Alternate captain Rourke Chartier is enjoying his offseason. We'll catch up with him from Saskatchewan, and we'll also get a bit of an update on the roster. Last week we talked about a handful of signings. Kevin Mandolese has inked another deal for another season, so we'll update you on all of that over the course of the next, probably half hour or so. And an exciting day around the league. We know where we're going, and we know that the season starts on October the 14th. Not in Laval. And maybe that's one of the most exciting parts of the schedule, Joel, is that for the first time in franchise history, the Senators will not begin the season against the Laval Rocket.
Yeah, very true. And when we look at the schedule this year, there's a lot of differences. There's some different dates that the Belleville Senators are going to be playing on throughout the course of the season, and a couple new opponents that the Sens haven't played in a couple seasons. So we'll break it all down over the next half an hour here. But obviously an exciting day for the franchise, exciting day for the fans too, as they kind of can start to plan their winter months and their entertainment.
Yeah, and our sales staff has been working pretty hard since the season ended in April, trying to get people locked in for the upcoming season, whether it's a season ticket package or a group outing or a flex package. And, to their credit, they've done an excellent job, but it's a little difficult sometimes for people to make that purchase decision when they don't have dates. Well, now there's no excuse. You've got your dates, and when any of our sales team give you a ring, if you're in the system already, you'll be able to pick the dates you want. And, start now. It's fresh slate. Everything's out there. And again, this is still for groups, flex, and season tickets. Single ticket details will come out in the coming weeks as we prepare for the upcoming season. But what's your first reaction to the schedule? For me, and I mean, you work all the games as well, whether you're traveling or not, it's a little bit lighter. We have some Saturdays off this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to me is you look at, there's a lot more afternoon games. Like you said, it's less Saturday at home, a little more Sundays at home now.
And that's something that we should say we've been hearing from fans as we kind of do our outreach and collect that feedback at the end of seasons. People are saying, yeah, we'd love some more afternoon games. It would make it much easier to get here. You asked, we listened. We will have 4 matinee games at CAA Arena this year.
Yeah, and I think that's really exciting when you look at the fans kind of wanting to have a little bit more afternoon games, more family-friendly kind of times. I know during the school year it's hard to get them out on a Friday night, sometimes a Saturday night, Wednesday nights as well. So a couple Sunday afternoon games that the kids can enjoy as well. And then when I look at the schedule, I think too, you talked off the top, not the home and home with Laval to start the season. The home openers pushed to the next weekend. So still against the Laval Rocket, but that's a great rivalry. And I think when you look at that, it gives fans a little bit of more reach to kind of get to know the players, watch those first couple road games, get used to the players, get used to the team, and then they come home, and it's a nice 4-game homestand to kind of kickstart the end of October there.
And we should mention that all of the usual home opener activities are planned. The Belleville Sens Fan Fest with games and fun for the kids, and the red carpet arrivals, which are always a big hit. So that is all in the works for October 21st, when the Sens open the home portion of the schedule against the Laval Rocket here. The season starts in Hershey. It's going to be an interesting way to kick off the campaign. We'll be at the Giant Center, the home of the now reigning, defending AHL champion Hershey Bears. We'll watch them put their banner up and then try to disappoint that crowd of about 9,000 or so on opening night. And then a quick turnaround the next afternoon in Lehigh Valley against the Phantoms. And then that's it for the visits to Hershey and Lehigh. They're done at the start of the year. You mentioned we're back for 4 games at home: Laval, Milwaukee, couple against Toronto, and then it's back out to the Atlantic Division at the start of November for Springfield and Wilkes-Barre. And by the end of November, the Sens have done all of their long travel eastwards anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of it as well, right? And especially for you traveling with the team. The Atlantic Division trips are done at the end of November, and that's always a tough division to get wins in, and the Belleville Senators are going to hope to get off to a good start against those Eastern Conference foes. And then as we look, again, this season ends with a lot of divisional games, which is going to be awesome. It's going to be tight leading into the postseason, and that's the way the league likes it as well. So like you mentioned, a lot of Atlantic Division teams earlier in the season, and then you finish it off with a lot of in-divisional games, which is awesome to see again.
And one of those Atlantic Division games that we get out of the way in November is Hartford. We'll go back to the XL Center to play the Wolfpack for just the one game this season. We made a couple trips there 2 seasons ago. One of them was because of a reschedule. And, that'll be the Senators' first trip back to Hartford for the first time in a couple seasons. Hartford and Bridgeport to finish the month, and then that's November, and then we get ready for a pretty busy December as well, where the Grand Rapids Griffins will make their first trip back to CAA Arena since the 1920 season.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of fans in the region, the original 6 franchise with Detroit, so I know a lot of people have been clamoring to get the Grand Rapids Griffins back on the schedule, and they're back in a big way with 4 games, 2 there, 2 here, so they're always a team that's fun to watch. They're always a team that invests heavily in their American Hockey League franchise as well, so it's good to see them back on the schedule.
Also, in December, we've got the game on the 28th again, right in the middle of the holiday break. That's going to be against Laval. That's our holiday celebration game. The Teddy Bear Toss in there as well. All the promo dates will be available at BellevilleSens.com. Flipping the calendar into 2024, if we get that far ahead of ourselves already, the Sens will make their only trip out west to Winnipeg. They'll spend a lot of time in that Central Division in the month of January to start the new year.
Yeah, and I think that's good to kind of get used to that division and see those teams regularly and get into their style of play. I know it's they like to play a little bit different of a style out in the West, maybe a more physical, grinding type of game. So it's good to get those off early, and you see Manitoba twice on a weekend, then you go home, you get Manitoba at home, and then you go back out and you see that Milwaukee Grand Rapids trip to kind of close out the month of January. But it's good to kind of get it all done in a month, and maybe a little bit of travel at the beginning and end of the month, but and then you come home in February, and like we mentioned before, a lot of divisional games to close out the season.
That stretch at the end of January, beginning of February, so Milwaukee, 2 in Grand Rapids, and then 2 in Syracuse. The 5 games is the longest road swing of the season for the Senators. Now, they will come home in between the trip to Grand Rapids and Syracuse. Some teams are not that lucky. I think Utica, is a 17-day road trip. And the last time the Senators played in Grand Rapids, it was on a trip like that, a couple of weeks away from home. So really, it does seem like a much more player-friendly schedule, despite the fact that there are some really busy 4-game weeks mixed in.
Yeah, it's really compact, I think, when you look at it, and the travel is very compact too. You get those 2 trips out to the Central Division, but you do them in 2 separate transactions. So I think players like that they get to come home they don't get to go on those 17-day stretches where you're not home. You go out to Winnipeg for a weekend and you're home. Then you get to come back, you play a couple of games in division, then you go back out to the Milwaukee, Grand Rapids. You get that done in a week as well. So I know you mentioned the long road trips. Toronto, I think last year they had their Royal road trip where they were gone for, it seemed, a month. Yeah. So I think the players do really like this schedule and the friendliness of it, especially when you get those stopping points at least back home for a couple days. And
we'll get some, or start to get some feedback on the schedule from some more players and staff as we roll through the summer on the Belleville Sens podcast. Coming up on this episode, we'll chat with Rourke Chartier, and we'll also get you the latest roster updates in our final segment of the show. We'll continue on, though. Last note for February is that on Family Day, that's February 19th, that's a Monday afternoon against the Hershey Bears, we'll planning specialty jerseys that day, and a lot of other additional things that fans have asked for that were planning to mix in this year. And again, more details on the promotions and all the non-hockey stuff to come. But we've got things planned like post-game skates, post-game autograph signings. We mentioned the pregame activities already. There's some changes coming in concessions. Lots to be excited for as we head through the rest of the offseason. And again, BellevilleSens.com and the Sens socials at Belleville Sens will be the spot to get all that information as it breaks. Joel mentioned it. March and April are pretty much strictly divisional months, except for a matchup with Bridgeport in March and one with Springfield in April. But, once you get out of January, it's basically all division all the time. And we saw last season and the season before just exactly how much of an impact that can make at the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's going to be vital again this year. And we know the North Division, it's going to be tight. All these teams are stacking up, so to speak, as we kind of look at the rosters and what the Marlies have been able to do. Rochester's always hungry to get back into the playoffs. Laval. So it's going to be a really exciting end to the season again. It's going to be another push for the playoffs here, and I think the fans and the league wouldn't have it any other way.
Full schedule details at BellevilleSens.com. Again, the Sens socials as well. You can find links to the schedules in list form or calendar form, whatever way you like to take in your information. We've got just about all of them for you, even video form. Garrett Harvey and our video team, well, he is the video team. He did our release video, which was hilarious. Caught up with some folks at Black Bear Ridge and at the Belleville Waterfront Festival as well. Some really good creative schedule launch videos around the league this year. It's become one of my favorite days of the summer.
Yeah, and I think it's an awesome to see the way that these creative folks, and Garrett's no different, the way he can kind of sit down and get this plan and then this video processed, and he did a tremendous job with it. And watching our schedule release video and some of the funny answers when fans are trying to guess the different teams and the different cities they play in, and it's great to see that come off. And like you mentioned, across the league, there's a lot of people in these positions that are really talented. So I'm really excited to dive into some of those more tonight. And obviously, I'm glad that people enjoyed what Garrett was able to put out on our end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Schedule release day, it feels like there's always so much anticipation for the day, and then it happens and you get all pumped up and you go, oh, wait a second, it's only July. We still have 3 months until the season starts. But, again, lots of reasons, as we've been saying, to get excited. Who are you looking forward to seeing most this year?
It's tough.
I know you're a Flyers guy, so when Lehigh comes in, the ears perk up a little bit. But, for me, again, we haven't seen Grand Rapids in a couple of years. And like you said, they're always competitive. Hartford is a neat place to go because it's where the Whalers used to play. I'm looking forward to getting back out there. I guess it is mostly the usual suspects, except for those those two new teams that weren't on there last year.
Yeah, I always like the way Milwaukee plays. I always like the kind of style they play with, the way they kind of play that trap and that bigger kind of style. So I'm excited to see them. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see Cleveland in their new look uniforms and their new look main logo. So they released that today. And then, obviously, I think you're always excited to see the Marlies and see Laval the first time through to kind of see what they have to offer each season, because you're in for 10 and 12 with them. So, and then, obviously, like you mentioned, it's cool to see Hartford and Grand Rapids back on the schedule.
Yeah, the quick schedule breakdown are some of the highlights, again, from the Belleville Sens schedule. First time in franchise history that Sens have not opened the season against Laval. Longest homestand is 4 games. We'll do that once in October, once in March. The 5-game road stretch that we talked about. Busiest months, December, February, and March. There'll be 12 games. The busiest home months are December and March, where there are 7 games. Busiest road month is January, where there are 8 games. We'll play 50 against the North Division, 12 against the Atlantic Division, and 10 against the Central. We mentioned Grand Rapids in for the first time since 1920, Hartford for the first time since 21-22, and those afternoon games we mentioned as well. 3 Sunday afternoons and the Family Day matinee on February 19th. Those will be packed for sure. And again, if you want to get a group in, you want to buy flex packs, season ticket packages, all the info you need is at BellevilleSens.com, and our crack ticket team are always happy to chat with you. We will chat with Sens forward Rourke Chartier in just a moment when we return. This is episode 20 of the Belleville Sens podcast.
Get in the game. Start planning now for the next season of Belleville Senators hockey. The new Belleville Sens Business Elite program is a season seat membership just for business. Use tickets to treat your staff or attract new clients. Benefits include AHL TV game packages, exclusive member events, and more. All packages offer a VIP business experience like in-arena signage. More info on season seat memberships, flex packs, and the Business Elite program at BellevilleSens.com. Go, Sens, go!
Back on the Belleville Sens podcast, David Foote and Joel Vanderlaan here with you as we've been breaking down the schedule on episode number 20. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the pod wherever you're tuning in right now. Give us a rating and a review. We'd really appreciate that as season number 1 of the Belleville Sens podcast rolls on. Season 2 fast approaching, as we've been talking about. October 14th is when the Senators will open the 23-24 campaign in Hershey against the Bears. One of the guys who actually may or may not be in the lineup that night is Rourke Chartier. Just re-signed with the Senators on a two-way NHL deal, which means he could end up in Ottawa at the start of the season if he has a really good training camp there. We'll chat with the Saskatchewan native in just a moment from his hometown, and I will preface that the cell reception both at CAA Arena and in Saskatoon is apparently not great, so it will be a little jumbled at times. You'll have to listen closely, but he does have some good things to say. Before we get to Rourke, maybe let's remind the folks about the season that he just had. Excellent finish, injury-riddled through the middle, strong start. It was pretty much a textbook year, unfortunately, for Rourke Chartier.
Yeah, and I think the impressive thing is he still managed 20 goals in only 40 games. Mm-hmm. So when you look at Rourke Chartier, he's proven goal scorer at this level. He showed well when he was up with the Ottawa Senators. He got into 6 games with them as well, and I think, like you mentioned, the end of the season I think really cemented their decision on him to bring him back the way he played under Dave Bell, and then obviously DJ Smith thinks of him as a viable recall option too. So I think all those things really worked in his favor, and I'm glad to see him back with the hockey club as well. And anytime you wear an A, I think that bodes well for the way the franchise thinks about you as well.
Earlier in the offseason last year, he was off around Europe and things like that. Let's find out where Rourke Chartier has been spending his time this offseason. The Belleville Sens forward joins us next on the Belleville Sens podcast. Charts, how you doing, man? How's the summer been?
I've been good, guys. Yeah, hanging out, lots of golf and skating, and haven't done too much traveling, but it's good so far.
Yeah, plans to travel around here for the back half of the off season?
Not really. I think it would have been nice to go right after the season, but the way it went, just kind of stuck around here. I'll probably head up to like a couple of weekends, but it's been good so far. It's been relaxing.
Nice. As I mentioned there, you were one of the first players to re-sign with the organization. This will be your third stint now with the Senators. What is it about the club and the organization that made it such a, I guess, easy decision for you early in the summer to agree to come back?
Yeah, I think even ideally it would have been nice to sign an extension during the season, but with everything going on with the team, I was happy to get it done. And I enjoy the staff and all the coaches, and we've done a good job having a good culture on both teams. So I was excited to come back, and like I said, I wish it would have been done earlier, but I'm happy it was done.
Yeah, and obviously nice to have that kind of pressure off early in the offseason too, I'd imagine, in having some stability and knowing where you're headed in September.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in a situation where you're kind of sitting and waiting, maybe in a couple other years prior, so you can get it done as soon as possible and kind of sit back and it's nice.
You had a really strong finish to the season, Rourke. I think you had 7 points in your last 4 games. How did you kind of mesh with David Bell and his coaching staff at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it wasn't too different with Bellsy at Bell. It was, same kind of Bellsy where he has a lot of respect for all our guys. And no, it's always been good to me. So I don't think it was so much different. I kind of played the last few games there after coming back from a couple of different injuries. So maybe just at the end I felt a little bit better on my skates and got back up to the pace again.
How much does it mean to you? You got the endorsement of DJ Smith. You played 6 games under him in the NHL, and then obviously David Bell wanted you back to come back to the organization. What does that mean to you to hear that those guys really pushed for you to get this extension?
Yeah, I think I owe a lot to both those guys. The opportunity they've given me. So, again, I wasn't too sure, and I think no one was really sure what was going on with this year with the ownership changes and stuff. So that was big for me too. On my end, once I saw both those guys were coming back, I made it a pretty easy decision for me.
Chatting with Senators forward Rourke Chartier, who re-signed with the organization not too long ago now. This was a very close group last year with everything that this team went through. Are you in touch with many of the guys through the offseason at all?
Yeah, I keep in touch with a decent amount of the guys. And no, that's the one thing. We've always had a pretty good culture and a tight-knit group in Belleville. So hopefully, like I said, I thought it was a little short with everything that went on. So I think hopefully we can have a strong year right on the gate this time.
Yeah, and turnover is obviously a huge thing in this league, and this team not untouched by that this year. Naturally, I assume you've been following along with the moves that Pierre Dorion and his staff have been making. What do you think about how things are kind of shaping up here with a couple months to go before the season starts?
Yeah, it's looking like we'll have an exciting group again, and a lot of guys back. But at the same time, like you said, it's a league of ever-changing rosters, and we'll have some of them as well. So it's looking like we're gonna have a good team from what I see. So you never really tell till the first couple of games, but yeah, it's looking like an exciting group with some young guys coming in too.
Yeah, it is for sure. A couple more questions here for Rourke Chartier. I know that injuries have obviously been kind of an underlying story for you in your career. How do you kind of approach your off-season training, I suppose, in trying to get yourself ready and maybe mitigate some of those unfortunate knocks when the season begins?
Yeah, nothing too different. I think this is really one of the first summers I've been 100% healthy going in. But yeah, in terms of injuries the last couple of years, and broken hands and whatnot. So I don't know what really I can do to train that. Not break your hand, but so nothing really changes for me. It's kind of exciting to have a full plate of health going into an off-season.
Yeah, and what does the rest of the summer look like for you? And I guess you come back to Ontario for camp in September?
Yeah, I haven't made any plans for the summer. Probably go up to the lake on weekend, and as we get closer to September, probably drive out a little bit early and I'm in Ottawa before camp. But yeah, nothing too crazy on the next schedule.
So a little bit of downtime's good either way. Whether it's Ottawa or here in Belleville, we'll see you in a couple of months. Rourke, thanks again for the time, and enjoy the rest of the summer.
All right, thanks.
All right, Sens forward Rourke Chartier. And again, apologies for the slight technical difficulties we had with the cell signal, but I think we were still able to get a fair amount of good stuff from him. He's been playing lots of golf this summer. He's not traveling as much as he was. Seems like he's pretty focused already on the upcoming campaign.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that you notice when you talk to Rourke. He's very serious about his craft. He takes it. He takes his game very seriously as well, and I think, like you mentioned, I think that's kind of his mode right now. It's getting back, getting healthy, and trying to get back to the NHL level after a brief stint with the Sens last year.
We were both kind of talking about his signing, and this is not really a knock on the player or his skill level at all. I think to say that we were a little bit surprised to see that Rourke Chartier had come back. And again, not anything to do with the player, but more so the makeup of this team here in Belleville and naturally in Ottawa as well. It didn't seem there would be much fit, but you talked about it before the interview. This is a guy that Dave Bell holds in high regard. It's a guy that DJ Smith holds in high regard, and when you get that kind of backing from both head coaches in the organization, it makes it a pretty easy decision, I think, for upper management to offer you that deal and to bring him back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you look at what this team went through last year with the injuries and the 53 players being used, I think when Ryan Bowness kind of assessed and Dave Bell, like you mentioned, and DJ Smith come to him and say, this is a guy we want to re-sign, you take it very seriously. And it's not a bad thing to have depth at forward, especially at center. And he's a guy that can kill penalties. He can play on the power play. He can come up and down with the NHL team. He's not going to make any trouble in the locker room as well. He wore an ace, so I think when you look at it from that perspective, I think for Ryan Bowness it was kind of a no-brainer. But obviously, when you look at the depth chart, they're pretty stacked up front right now on guys on two-way contracts. So I think from that perspective, it was a little surprising. But at the end of the day, he's a very talented hockey player, and he's going to make a difference here or in Ottawa.
Yeah, we've seen the impact player that he can be, whether it's throwing a hit, grinding out on the board, scoring an overtime winner in Laval or Toronto. He'll rise to the occasion. And, we were a little surprised because personally I thought maybe he'd try to get an opportunity closer to home. There's so many. There's AHL teams in Central Canada now, so why not try to take a shot? But we're more than happy to have him and excited to see what kind of impact Rourke Chartier can make on the club in year number 3. A couple more lineup notes, roster notes to fill you in on. Kevin Mandolese is back for another season. We'll touch on that and maybe some of the notable signings or departures from around the division as well. Some familiar faces changing names. We'll get you updated on that as we head into the final segment of episode 20 on the Belleville Sens podcast. Stay with us.
Don't miss 1 second of Belleville Senators action this season. The Belleville Sens Entertainment Network is the only place to hear live coverage of the Belleville Senators for all 72 games plus playoffs. Pre-game coverage begins 15 minutes before each game with David Foote, and the network is also home to the Belleville Sens podcast. The Belleville Senators Entertainment Network, presented by Deerhaven Farm and Garden. Tune in on the Belleville Sens app or BellevilleSens.com.
Rolling through episode 20 of the Belleville Sens podcast with myself, David Foote, and Joel Vanderlaan. The schedule, again, is out. We recapped it all in the first segment of the show. You can head to BellevilleSens.com now to start your winter planning. It's never too early, and again, if you want to get a jump on everybody else and lock down some dates for a flex pack or a group outing, you can do that via the tickets tab at BellevilleSens.com as well. And our elite team of ticket sales and customer service experts would love to help get your butt into a seat at CAA Arena for multiple games of the upcoming season. Again, a lot of excitement around the team, some new faces coming in here at CAA Arena, and one of those returning familiar faces will be Kevin Mandolese, who signed a one-year two-way extension with the Ottawa Senators this weekend. We used a lot of goaltenders last season. Hopefully we don't need to use as many this year, but they're prepared. There's about 6 or 7 in the stable right now.
Yeah, and I think with Kevin Mandolese, I think when you look at him and this contract, he earned it with the way that he was able to acquit himself at the NHL level, the AHL level, and even the ECHL level. So when Pierre Dorian mentioned that he was coming back and was going to agree to this extension, he said that the biggest thing was that he improved, that he showed that he was continuing to develop properly, and I think he has. And to to what you said as well, like when you go through the amount of goalies they went through last season, I think you're a little weary of letting guys go past you, letting guys hit the open market, and when you're scrambling in the middle of the season to find guys, you're getting guys from U Sports, you're getting guys from the ECHL to start hockey games for you, and you have a perfectly good Kevin Mandalese there. It makes it makes a ton of sense to keep him in the organization, re-sign him, get him on this extension, and bring him back and continue to develop him. Because if you look at the way that Justin Peters has worked with these goalies and the amount of time he spends with Kevin Mandalese, with Matt Sogard, and the way that they've been able to take his tutelage and take his teachings and play at the NHL level and play well at the AHL level as well, it makes total sense to keep them both with him and continue to keep them in the organization.
And, I mean, if we look at the Ottawa picture, Eunice Korpisalo obviously will be with the Senators. Forsberg will obviously be with the Senators. That's probably going to be their number 2 unless Matt Sogard or even maybe Levi Merilainen goes into camp and really shines and stands out and is able to earn some extra games up there. So let's, for argument's sake, just say that's the case. It's Forsberg and it's Korpisalo in Ottawa, which means it's going to be a fight between Mando, Sogard, Merilainen, and Mark Sinclair for the 4 spots, or for the 2 spots in Belleville, I should say. That's going to make for a really interesting Belleville Senators camp if things shake down that way.
Yeah, it is, and Mark Sinclair's a guy that's played well at the ECHL level. He played well when he got his shot in the AHL with the Belleville Senators as well, earning a shutout in his first AHL start too. So he's not going to come here and think, hey, I'm going to Allen. He's going to come in thinking that he can earn a spot here as well. So like we mentioned, the depth of the goaltending stable is really impressive here, and I think going through what they went through last year, Ryan Bonus and David Bell, Justin Peters, they're not going to let that happen again.
No, they certainly will not. Looking up front, Ottawa making a big trade this week. They send Alex DeBrincat back home. He made it pretty clear he wanted to be in Detroit, and they sent him there, and they get back among other players, Dominic Kubalik, who played for the Sudbury Wolves, the OHL, and they also get Donovan Sabrango, who represented Canada at the World Juniors last year and is an Ottawa native, a young defenseman who is more than likely going to fight for a spot here in Belleville this season. What should Belleville Sens fans know about one of the newest Senators?
Yeah, I think when you look at him, he's 21 years old and he's played in 135 AHL games. So there's a lot of experience there. He has good size. He's 6'1", 194 pounds, left shot defenseman. I think he's another guy that when Pierre Doran was looking at the trade and looking at the stable of prospects he could pick through from the Detroit side, I think he looked at this young man and said, hey, that's a good guy for David Bell to develop.
Yeah.
He's got size. He can skate. He's played at the highest level with Team Canada. He was an alternate captain at the World Juniors as well. So a character young man. We were talking in the office. His dad's a professional footballer, soccer player. So good bloodlines in that regard as well. So I think when they looked at Donovan Sabrango, I think they really had in their mind that this is a guy that David Bell and his staff can work with and mold and kind of build off that past AHL experience that he has.
And we talk so much about prospects. And this is, I think, if you look up the definition of prospect, and you might as well see Donovan Sabrango's picture there because, like you say, he's got good bloodlines, good pedigree in the athleticism. Obviously, getting into the program of excellence with Hockey Canada shows that he's got some skill. He's not blowing players out of the water in terms of his numbers offensively from the blue line, but you don't expect that from a young defenseman anyway. And like you say, David Bell and his staff have shown over his tenure here a strong penchant for turning prospect defensemen into everyday professional players. Look at Max Gannett as an example. This is a guy that I think kind of fits that mold, and like you said, he's played in a lot of AHL games already.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. And you look too, and people say, well, he played up in the AHL, and then he went down to the ECHL. Well, that Toledo team was a juggernaut, and he was playing heavy minutes for them. He was playing a lot of minutes for them, and he got into 13 Kelly Cup playoff games as well this season. So I think for this young man, he's played a lot of hockey. He's played a lot of good hockey. And I'm excited to see him kind of with Dylan Hetherington and Jacob Larson and some of these other guys, Max Gannett, and kind of see the way that locker room's going to kind of mold around him and push him. And I think it's going to be, like we mentioned, the depth thing is huge here after what they went through last season. And he's a guy that they know can play in this league. They know he plays an honest game, and he's going to be ready to go when training camp comes.
And, we'll, again, battle for a spot here, or he could end up in Allen. That was another headline this week. Senators renewing their ECHL affiliation with the Allen Americans, and really happy to be back on board with that class organization in the ECHL. Sabrango, the big piece for the Belleville Sens in the Alex DeBrincat trade, and we're looking forward to see what he brings come camp at the beginning of October. That's in and out for Belleville. Let's just quickly take a peek at a couple of our, let's just say, closest opponents. We're going to play Laval 12 times again this season. We're going to play Toronto 10 times again this season. And both teams are going to be missing some significant names that Belleville Sens fans might remember from the marathon series of last year.
Yeah, I think Toronto, you look at the way that they kind of rolled depth and carried depth, and some of that's gone with Simeon Duragan-Shentsev going back to his native Russia. Mark Johnstone went to Pittsburgh with Kyle Dubas, and you go down the list with some of those guys that have moved on from the organization. Obviously, they've done some work on replacing that. Joe Blandisi's back. Josiah Slavin, brother of Jacob Slavin from the Carolina Hurricanes, comes in. So I think the Toronto is a team that carries, as we know, a lot of players, and that leads to roster turnover each season. And I think we've seen that a little bit, and I think they're going to miss some of those guys, especially a guy like Mark Johnstone. We've seen him from when he first came into the league with the Marlies, and the way he works, the way he plays, and I think that's a really good pickup for Wilkes-Barre/Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned they re-signed Joe Blandisi, Zach Solo re-signing, Matteo Pietranero, and a handful of others. They did lose Graham Slaggert, who was really good for the Marlies last year. Sens will still have to deal with him as he's off to Rochester to play for the Americans. A quick check on the Laval Rocket as well, because they've had some pretty big names depart, including Xavier Simoneau. Otto Leskinen is going back to Finland. Pierrick Dubé moving on to the Washington Capitals. Peter Abbandonato, who is from Laval and was such a fan favorite there with the Rocket, he's gone to Chicago along with Tori Dello. And then Danik Martel is rumored to potentially be going to Russia. Those would be some big losses for the Laval Rocket.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's when you look at the way they build depth too, and they decided to bring back John Parker Jones, Gabriel Bork, and the likes
Riley
of those.
McKay.
Yeah, so
my favorite player for the Laval Rocket.
Yeah, he plays hard for sure, and but when you bring in those guys, it pushes others away too, right? So I think we've seen that here as well with Sabrin and Lucchini moving on, but it's interesting to see how it's all going to work out with the new players coming in all these organizations, and some familiar faces in other cities as well. So that's the beauty of the American Hockey League. I think it's always the roster turnover and the players moving around, and I think it keeps you especially on your toes when you go into a new city and you're doing your game prep and you're looking on the sheet, and it's the same cast of characters mostly, but they move around quite a bit for sure.
Yeah, the first time we will see the Laval Rocket, again, is the home opener on October the 21st here at CAA Arena. We don't see the Toronto Marlies until, well, the end of October, I guess. We don't go to Toronto until, like, Boxing Day, I think, is the first game. And that will be at Scotiabank Arena, home of the Maple Leafs. And, again, if you're looking for something to do on Boxing Day, maybe just put that in the back of your mind right now. It'd be great to see some Sens fans down there. Look, the schedule is out. We're starting to really get excited, even though there are still 3 months until the season begins. But you can stay tuned to the Belleville Sens podcast week to week, and for more breaking and up-to-date news and information, the Senators' socials at Belleville Sens on all the major platforms, and of course, and Threads, including Threads, if you've made the jump to the Threads. And we're also, obviously, putting all of our stuff up at BellevilleSens.com for you to see as well. Any final thoughts this week, Joel? It's been, again, an exciting week. I think we can breathe for a couple days here. We've got the Belly Awards, our front office awards this week, and then you're getting ready for vacation. I am, yeah, and I'm excited for that as well, to get a little bit of time off. But I think you hit it right there, exciting, and the schedule, Reese, is always a fun time to kind of sit back and know what you're going to be doing for the next couple of months, and know where you're going to be and what teams you're going to be able to watch. So it's for the fans and for the front office, definitely an exciting day. Joel's vacation, I shouldn't get ahead of myself. Joel's vacation is not for 2 weeks, so he will be back, as will I, next week on the Belleville Sens podcast. We'll have another interview for you. We'll get you caught up on any other news and notes that might percolate through over the next 7 days or so. For now, we'll say goodbye. For Joel Vanderlaan, David Foote, thanking you so much for listening. Again, please subscribe to the show, rate and review, and hopefully you'll join us again next week on the Belleville Sens podcast.